Welcome everybody back here at Veil of Sound. We have another regular Sunday interview, and doing this and preparing this, I noticed that, well, yes, we've been doing this for like 3 years by now, because we're coming full spin again, and I'm very, very happy to have another interview with the Scarcity now, both of them with the Scarcity guys. So Brandon and Doug, thanks for joining.
My pleasure. Yep. Thanks for having us, Thorsten.
Yeah, it's always nice to also talk to people that you've been talking to like a few years ago, and there is a certain familiarity. You know, you don't have to hide any jokes and stuff like that. So, but first question always, and I know that at least as far as I see it, Mr. Moore is prepared. The shirt of the day, gentlemen. What do you want to plug?
Yes.
Which band?
So this is my friend's band, Replicant. They are I guess you would say they're a technical death metal band or a dissonant death metal band. They're based out of New Jersey, featuring a couple of my dear friends that I've known for well over 10 years at this point, since many of their prior bands were playing. And they played a bunch of shows with one of my other bands, Piron. They're like longtime comrades in arms of ours. And they released a new album quite recently that is excellent and ought to be checked out by anyone listening to this.
So if you want to follow that up, you will find the link in our show notes. So yes, you should check it out. It's a really good record. It's
a killer record. Yeah, love it.
So, Mr. Randall Myers, how about you?
I am wearing a shirt with no logo, but I want to plug the new Couch Slut record, which is fucking excellent. Our guitarist Dylan is also playing on it. Doug has a guest spot.
Two guest spots.
Yeah. And it's just a gnarly nightmare of a record, and it's very good.
Yeah. And for anybody who asks what little me is wearing, the Ocean, of course.
Nice.
German guys, so once in a while.
Very cool.
Yeah. A few months ago, when somebody asked me which is the band that you've seen most, the Ocean is number 2. So with 19 times that I've seen them. Yeah.
What's number 1?
Very easy, Boys That's Fire. I'm going to number 30 this year, so.
Wow. That's impressive.
It's dedication.
Yeah. I mean, when you've seen a band, let me think. I think this year it's my 25th year of going to Boys That's Fire shows. So yeah, I think I've seen every tour of them. Let's put it like that. Yeah, could you answer that, guys? The band that you've seen the most, or the artist?
For me, I know the answer, and it's Artificial Brain, and it's because Piron has played shows with them so often and toured with them so much that I've seen them somewhere between 50 and 100 times. I don't know exactly how many at this point. But,
yeah, it's only a small margin.
Right. I mean, well, that's another band. We're actually much like Replicant. We've kind of just known those guys for 15 years at this point almost, and you just end up seeing them many, many times, especially if you're on the road with them. I mean, at least 30 plus of those are from one tour. And then we've done a couple other little runs with them and seen them casually and played one-off shows. And, they're the band that I've seen the most by quite a lot. Couch Slut's up there too, actually. I've seen Couch Slut probably 40 times at this juncture.
Wow.
So yeah. So we've done a couple of tours with them, and they play around a lot here, etc. So yeah, and there's probably a few others that are in that neighborhood, but those two probably are at the top of the heap.
Randall, could you name an artist that you've seen more than just a few times?
It's kind of funny. I think probably, I've seen Kralis a lot of times, but I think I've seen Piron more times than that, actually. Which I think it probably since, I don't know, there's been no touring with Piron, obviously, from my end, but it's probably, I think over, the last 10 whatever years that I've been in New York, I probably have seen them at least once a year. And so that is at least in the 15 times range, which I think is more than I've seen any other band.
The first one that you mentioned was Crowhurst, right?
Kralis?
Yeah, Kralis. I didn't get it at first. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I've seen Corrales like maybe, I don't know, between 5 and 10 times probably.
So guys, let's talk about the new record. And the first thing that struck me was the first record that you had a Hebrew name, Avelut. And Brendan, you and I talked about it. It's morning, right, in Hebrew. And now you come up with a title called The Promise of Rain. Are you two like trying to have a realistic look at our day and age, or is it just the pessimists in you who come up with stuff like that? And I mean, like, it's on one side it's funny, and on the other it's like dead serious, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I don't know, Doug, you should probably, there's things in this we could both speak to. I think in terms of the specifics of like the name, like this is like Doug's words. Maybe he should actually speak to it.
Sure. I would say, from my perspective at least, obviously, once you put a piece of art out into the world, people will form their own connections to it and interpret it in ways that make sense for them. And I don't mean to step on anyone's interpretation of it in that way, but to me, it's actually a fairly optimistic record, in the sense that the major themes of the record are learning to thrive in difficult circumstances, and learning to sustain connections to people who are challenging to be with, who are hard to love. And so the big central image of the record is the desert. As it happened when we started working on the record, and when like my moment to start writing the lyrics arrived, I had just spent a little over a week in the high desert of southern Utah, which is a really incredible place. It's, if you think about like what the alien landscapes in a Calvin and Hobbes strip look like, it's literally modeled on that part of Utah, just these totally otherworldly rock formations. Very, very beautiful place. Also a very dangerous place. It is very inhospitable to human life in a lot of places. And even like the parks and stuff there, if you don't take the requirements of the terrain seriously, you will die. And there's straight up, there are signs even in like the national parks that are like, you can die here. Like don't fuck around, basically. And so we had kind of before this moment spoken, Brendan and I, about what the themes of the record would be. And we had both been through some experiences recently at the time, but also throughout our lives, with, trying to sustain loving relationships with people who are very, very challenging to be around and to be with, due to mental illness mostly. And there was something about the experience of being in this remote, fantastic, but very dangerous place that it sort of rhymed with that theme to me. There was this feeling of like, okay, on one hand, this place is incredibly dangerous and threatening, and most people would not be able to live here really, and wouldn't want to. But on the other hand, it's also this incredible experience that not many people get to encounter in life. And so that kind of became this giant sort of metonym within the record of, the way in which having close relations with damaged people can have this quality of challenging and yet rewarding, beautiful and yet terrifying at times. Even in the desert, it rains sometimes, and like the landscape seems, antithetical to water and almost hostile to it in a way. You pour water out in the ground in the desert, the ground just eats it, basically, just sucks it in. But it's also something that is required for, like, the reason that the rocks are shaped that way and everything is because of the passage of wind and rain against them, carves these beautiful shapes into them. So that was kind of like, in that sense, to me, it's a hopeful title. It's about how even though these relationships can be challenging and these places can feel so inhospitable, and like almost like vampiric in a way, that also produces this beautiful effect and like is part of this, this cycle in which things can thrive, in which, life can thrive and achieve like really wonderful shapes. Yeah, that's like, to me, like that, there's obviously darkness in that, there's, it can be horrible, it can be painful, it can be dangerous, but it also can produce experiences and situations that are like really singular and amazing. And so sometimes it's worth the risk, and it's worth the danger, and it's worth the pain that can come with that. And so so I don't feel like it's pessimistic in that way. I feel like it's optimistic. It's saying like you can, like, the rain will come, and things will continue. And if you want to thrive in this place, you may have to make sacrifices, but you can also experience beauty here.
But you are aware of like, first of all, that's a great explanation. And having had a look at the lyrics a little bit simultaneously while you were speaking, I can see that. But I'm very sure you're also aware of the ambiguity of a lot of the symbols that you're using. And at first glance, it looks like a very critical record, and critical in the way of how we deal with our planet, how we take care of it. You are aware of that, right?
Yeah, and that was also something that was on my mind at the time, because on this trip to Utah that I was referring to, traveling around in parks, there's many inducements for people to treat the land well and not fuck it up with their garbage, and they're like stomping around on delicate parts of the ecosystem, and they're relieving themselves in places where they shouldn't. And of course, you also see people ignoring all those rules and doing, and just like fucking up the land, basically, which is infuriating to me. I actually got in like a little dispute with someone over that while I was out there. Just yelled at somebody for doing that. In any case, and that's also reflected in the way that people treat others who are in like mentally vulnerable places. People are just as crappy to each other as they are to the planet, and that is something else that is present when I think about my own past history, relating to the people in my life who've had those kinds of psychological conditions. Is that like I've definitely not always been a perfect steward of their state, as it were. And so, it's a cold world in that way. And that's something that's in the record as well, is how, how much it is that we take these things for granted and treat them as fungible and disposable, when they're not. They're actually, we're the disposable.
Separate
things.
From us even.
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah, like just like a thing that's like, often basically like a theme park, and not the true the true inheritors of the future, really. Like, the desert will be there when we're gone. That's for sure.
Yeah. And there will be more of it. I mean, this is like, as Thorsten, now that you've brought this up, I'm like, it is funny. It's like there will be more and more desert as,
of course, like
climate change continues to occur and desertification continues. I don't know. It's just like the other thing this made me thinking of is like, it's a bit of a tangent. The idea even of like a national park versus, and the idea of stewarding land that you don't live in, versus, okay, there are places that we're trying to preserve. I don't know. There's just like, it's this very kind of like fucked up relationship with land where the options are either just demolish it entirely or preserve it as like an untouched kind of pristine wilderness space where like it's a pretty unnatural way of like relating to land either way, actually.
Right. And the thing that humans used to be able to do, and in some places presumably still do, is meet the land on its terms and thrive under its auspices according to what it needs from you, as opposed to just coming and saying like, all right, well, we're going to transform this place to only serve our needs. And that's, again, something that carries over into like the other side of the imagery coin, which is relationships with, difficult people. Like you can't just go and be like, well, you need to like start acting this way and I'm going to fix you and make you into like the kind of person that I want you to be. No, that doesn't work. Like that will just cause conflict and destruction. You have to take people on their terms. You have to learn what they need from you as much as what you need from them. And then try to find a way to live harmoniously with those terms. And in both cases, I think this applies.
Yeah. And then we're very quickly, we're back at the thing between like, just like you say, people who have inhabited this land for decades, centuries, hundreds of years. So natives versus colonialism, right? So that's like one of those deep things that is in there. But Brandon, I wanted to ask you something on a different level, because I've been watching you while Doug was explaining. And I was trying to read your face. How does it feel when Doug is laying out all those things that he came up with in his mind? How does it feel for you when you hear him explain all of that?
I mean, he and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, I think that this music means, I have like a slightly different set of experiences that I'm channeling into the music versus what Doug is channeling into the lyrics, but there's a lot of overlap in the kinds of experiences we were each bringing into this work. And I think the way that, kind of what we were maybe each trying to channel into it. I mean, I think one of the things I was thinking about as Doug was talking was just like, the instrumental side of the first record versus this one. And part of the reason they sound so different is like the first record was more kind of dealing with like much larger scale catastrophes and like a very like restricted space. And this time around, the things that I was going through were like much more like close to home, personal. There's like a lot of like really intense instability just like in my personal life and with people that I'm very close to. And so in some ways, like, I don't know, they were just very different flavors of depression and anxiety. But there was a major thing that came out of kind of both writing it, knowing I was writing for a band, knowing which, like, I was kind of thinking about like, okay, people are going to do this. I'm not going to just like track this in my room. I have to think about, like, I get to think about like, okay, I get to like do this in a room with people. We get to like deal with these sounds and emotions collectively rather than trying to just do it, generate it all myself, get it all down, spend, dozens of hours tracking all 8 guitar parts. So there's this kind of like the thesis of the record in some ways from my end is more like, you don't have to go through everything alone. And in fact, there are things that just cannot be borne alone. Like we cannot bear them, I think, alone.
It's very interesting that you say that, because while Doug was talking and I was watching you, I was thinking about one thing. Doug has been speaking about people that are difficult to love, and even though you want to love them, it can be difficult for you, and it has an effect on everyone, on both sides. Question that maybe both of you can give a short answer to. Is Scarcity an easy collaboration or easy cooperation because both of you have gone through similar things?
It's an easy collaboration for a number of reasons. I think some of which have to do with some of our like shared experience. Like there's like things I think we understand about each other that make working together pretty easy. I think our dispositions maybe are somewhat in response to the things that we've each been through also. But in general, yes, this group is like by far the easiest like working process of any band that I have been in personally.
I was just
and then Doug's gonna be like, it's the worst.
Brendan is not Glenn Branca, a somewhat more agreeable personality than Glenn, from what I understand. What I would say about that is that the mechanics of our collaboration have been very easy. Brendan is a very organized thinker. He documents his work very thoroughly. He's a good communicator, and he's also generous and willing to roll with people's feedback in a very like egoless kind of way, which makes it really nice to work with him because it means that you don't have to. There's not like this process of coddling someone's feelings or otherwise having to perform some kind of social jujitsu to get them to do something creatively or whatever, which like it's fun that happens sometimes in collaborations. It just is a part of working with artists because artists are complicated people. With Brendan, very little of that's been required, at least from my perspective. And he and I are both we have some of that stuff in common. We're both like these people who are, relatively organized, like quick to respond when we send each other stuff. So it just has been pretty smooth. What I would say on the other hand, though, is that the music itself is actually very challenging. It's like, not easy to make Scarcity music. As the first record was challenging in part because of the amount of sort of repetition with variation that was involved. It's just hard to compose even just the yelling vocals over that kind of structure. And for this one, there's a whole different variety of moods on the record. As a vocalist, it's hard to know how to satisfy those things. And, then I'm writing these lyrics that are pretty like sensitive and vulnerable sounding, then screaming them over this cacophonous music. And it's not that easy to do that in a way that's effective, I don't think. So it was good to work with Brendan on that, but I wouldn't say the collaboration was easy in the sense that like, oh yeah, we just breezed through this album and it was like totally like not effortful, because it was very effortful, I found, at least.
Yes.
For me.
I also certainly put plenty. All of us like put a lot into it. It's more like sometimes you have collaborations where everyone puts a lot into it, but you're also like butting heads the whole time. And I think like part of the way I would characterize this, like the band kind of dynamic in general, is that like people come in like just on top of their shit. Like everyone comes in knowing the parts. People like put time into like figuring out what they want to do. And then we can just get in a room and like work in a really focused way. Yeah.
The players are really good. The instrumental.
The guy who writes the music is not so good, but for players,
he's whatever. Yeah, he's fine. I guess he wrote the parts. Like, cool, congratulations. But like, but seriously, like the lineup that we have on this record, like those guys are fucking killers. And Brendan obviously is too. But it was really quite a. It was amazing to see those guys come in and just basically be able to play the songs immediately. Like the first time we rehearsed the material, Brendan composed it. We tweaked the stuff in the room so that people would be, their parts would feel more like the parts that they would want to play as opposed to something that someone else composed. But basically right out of the gate, we could kind of just play the songs because people had just learned the stuff from Brendan's transcriptions of it. I don't come from Brendan comes from more of a academic music background where people are able to do that stuff. I'm like a punk rock idiot basically, so like I'm used to having people flail through it in the room and have to do it a bunch of times before they can play it. I've never seen a band just walk into the room and right away be able to play the stuff in this fashion. So that was a notable part of the experience for me.
Yeah, and I should say also like I demoed everything in pretty like intense detail, and then I also like gave everybody parts, and then from there I sort of like at a certain point like that's kind of when I kind of washed my hands of it at that point, and I'm just like, okay, like now these parts are yours, figure out like how to make this your own stuff. Tristan, the bass player, and I like he had a lot of input into what he's doing. Like I think maybe a third of like the stuff on the record is stuff he either improvised or sort of like just kind of did himself. And then Lev obviously added a lot on drums too. I did like, I gave him like structure feels this is like where fills happen. And then he did some really just like awesome shit kind of within the broader parameters that I gave him. Yeah, I don't know. It is funny too. It's like, I think there's a way for me in which writing this music is just about like digging around for the right material. And then once I have the material, it all comes out pretty quickly. I mean, I think I was sending Doug drafts for like 4 to 6 months. And then once I really got into just like nuts and bolts of like, okay, I'm going to sit down and just kind of like finish all of this music, it was just like maybe a month.
It was really fast.
Do you think that that's also due because of having grown up or having grown in such an environment as the Branca ensemble, that you just simply have a very systematic approach to it once it's there?
Yeah, once I don't know. Yeah, like, I mean, my process really has 2 parts. It's like, it's just flailing around in the dark for a while, and that's like the much longer part of the process. But I don't, once I know what I'm doing, it's pretty easy for me to like, or I wouldn't say easy, but it's like, I have done this a lot of times at this point. Like mechanically, I'm very good at realizing an idea that I have in my head. And so like, once I'm clear on what the idea that I am going to work with, expanding it out is a very fast process. And I don't even know if it's like, there's a bit of systematicness to it, but it's more just like, I am good at hearing the thing that's in my head and then using the tools available to me to like realize it sonically. I've just been doing this for a long time at this point.
Yeah, but even if you have been doing this for such a long time, it doesn't necessarily mean that, this is going to be easy,
Yeah. I will also say that like the thing that made this record a lot easier to write in some ways than, I don't know, easier than Avolute. There was like, the thing that happened between Avolute and this record is that I figured out 2 guitar tunings that would let me and Dylan just cover all of the parts on the first record with only 2 players. And that was a big task. That was just like a lot of like math and like working out like left hand fingerings to be like, okay, where am I getting this like F sharp 31 cents flat? Well, the other everyone else has to do all this other shit. Like that was like that was a big just like kind of brain challenge to like just build the instruments and the tunings kind of that worked for that music. But once I had that, like this new record is in those same tunings that we used to perform Avolute live. So that was like, having that in place made a huge difference in terms of like how fast I could write, because I was able to just do more on the instrument from the get-go rather than like I wrote Avolute out entirely in notation before I learned any of the music.
And now you've already mentioned the 2 people you've brought in, Lev and Tristan. How did you
and Dylan
find
also?
them? Yeah, how did you find the 3 guys? How did you?
Tristan is a former bandmate of mine. I've known him also just from like freelancing together, but he played in my old math rock band Meritech, and the 2 of us have just bounced around New York's kind of like, freelance like performer scene for a long time. Dylan plays in Piran with Doug, and then I think Doug, you just kind of hit Lev up, right? I mean, you just sort of.
Yeah. So Lev is in Corrales and many other bands in New York. He's, one of these drummers par excellence who just, people can't get enough of him because he's very good. And also a very entertaining personality. So it's fun to have him in the band. But basically, I knew we needed a drummer. I had a couple of possibilities in mind. He was my first choice because so much of his specialty is being able to play relatively complicated stuff that is, horizontally expansive. Corrales has all these very long compositions where he's, blasting for long periods of time. And obviously that's like very heady music. So I knew he would have that sort of, be able to achieve that mechanical, iterative quality that characterizes so much of the first record, because the first record is a drum machine. And there's some players who I know could play all the notes correctly, but they would have more of a organic or loose or like jazzy kind of feel maybe, whereas Lev has this very precise, machine-like power that he can sort of achieve with his playing. So I asked him, he said yes, which is very lucky for us because he's a one-of-a-kind player, and I think he really elevated the band when he joined. So
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, basically it was just like our people we knew and friends around the community. The intention initially was for it to just be kind of a one-off thing so we could play Evolute live back in 2022. But we found that, the lineup was kind of gelling and people were interested in being on the next record and like having it sort of morph into a full band lineup with the conventional, 2 guitars, bass, drums, and vocal rock style lineup. And so we kind of just went down that road even before you started writing, if I'm not mistaken, Brendan, right? Like you kind of wrote with that stuff in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It was, yeah.
Before that, you already considered Scarcity a band, not a project.
I think during the Evolute release shows, and just like, I think it was just like, I was surprised at how much fun it was to play that music. It was extremely cathartic for me also, just kind of going full circle with the project of like having the thing come out of such like extreme isolation and then being able to kind of like do it for people with people and for people. And have the kind of energy exchange around it with an audience. Like I found that very therapeutic. And yeah, it's just like, given that like just the band vibe was good, people enjoyed it, and we sort of like, yeah, again, initially it was more in like the realm of project, but there were some show offers that we got, and just over the course of like the following kind of year, it became clear that there was some momentum behind it, and I like wanted to write more music, and people were interested, as Doug said, people were interested in playing on the record. And
yeah, I'm still hoping for European shows.
Yeah, me too, man.
That's the idea, sooner or later. Yeah. So
let's say sooner.
Inshallah,
Wait, I'm gonna take out my carpet. But yes, I know what you mean. I can see that. And there is also something about the music that feels very tight. It feels, I do not want to say that it feels as if it was written for a certain band, not that way, but there is some quality to it where I just say like, okay, this is pretty intense. I mean, like thinking of Scorched Visions, for example, a 685-second monster of like, I would say jungle tech death. When writing something like that and then delivering it that way, there must be a certain chemistry between everyone involved. And
yeah, we got a band of sickos. It's like 5 sickos, 4 sickos. I don't know.
Yeah, but still those guys but not only be psychos, but they also need to have certain musical abilities.
Yes.
And that is something that really is striking about the record. Like,
it's a recorded live. It's recorded live too. Like that's not like some piecemeal thing. Like those are band takes.
We basically 2-taked almost everything on the record.
Yeah, the whole thing was recorded very quickly. I think it was 3 days of tracking.
And like band basics were 1 day.
1 day, and then there were some overdubs, and we started vocals on the second day, and then the third day we finished the vocals. And that was it. I think it was really fast. Probably the fastest I've ever recorded a record. And so it's, to me, also surprising that it sounds as tight as it does. We also didn't rehearse that much for it, really.
We rehearsed 4 times.
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 practices before we recorded that. Like, which I think goes to show again, like we were talking earlier about it, like how prepared all the musicians were. They really were prepared. We really were playing the songs right away the first time we rehearsed them. And we only practiced a few times, and then we banged the album out, over a long weekend, more or less. It was quite a thing, easy for me to say as the vocalist, not exactly the most taxing job in that way, but still, it really went very smoothly. It felt like kismet almost, it was kind of this like thing that was kind of
Now
sort of
you're throwing
destined to
away
come
the
out.
foreign words, right?
Right.
Smith, what comes next? Oy vey. I don't
Oy
know.
vey.
Oy vey.
That's a local word for us.
Well,
the other thing I was gonna say about like, I mean, I guess just the band, I don't know, like the embodied aspect of this record, like that things are more kind of like overtly technical in certain ways. That is also not a mistake. That's like, you know, I spent the whole first record like writing myself to the point where I could like almost play a riff. There was this thing of like kind of, I think the word for this is like the kind of like self-abnegation almost, or like I really was like for a lot of the first record trying to just do nothing, like do as little as possible for as long as possible. And then, but like in that climax in part 3, I was like, oh, I could play a riff. And then that was kind of the starting point for this whole new record, was like, oh, I could play a riff. I'm good at playing riffs. I could actually have some fun with these guitar parts. And also because I'm like writing for such like foreign with such like awesome musicians, I can like give people stuff that I know they're going to like dig into and sort of have fun learning. Yeah.
I have 2 more questions before we come to the quickfire round, and one is definitely centered on Scorched Visions, because I hope you don't mind me calling this the centerpiece of a record. But not only is it the second track out of 6,
Mm-hmm.
6,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
it's also by far the longest. I do not want to say it's the most diverse, but it's definitely a lot happening in those 11 minutes. I do not know why, but when I listened to it over and over again, it felt as if this is your, to bring up a very big comparison, but this is like your version of Sepultura's Radha Mahada.
I don't even know. Wait, what even is that? I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah,
here comes the academic. It's only like the biggest thrash band or band ever to come out of Brazil, but you know, like. But maybe Doug can answer that because he knows the band. Is it just my imagination, or is there a certain like jungle feel to it?
I mean, the rhythms ended up definitely like kind of funky in places.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably just sort of our influences bubbling up, you know, in a non-conscious way. You know, we're, you know, even Brendan with his, you know, past in academic music and the conservatory and all of these
Which,
things.
by the way, we are making fun of it quite often, but you know, the guy here really knows how to play. He's been in an ensemble with like insanely good people, and he didn't.
It turns out you can really learn a lot by doing that, and in many ways, I wish that I had more of a formal musical background. You know, like I can play guitar and whatnot, but like I don't have that level of depth of knowledge, and like you really get a lot out of it. But prior to all that, you know, Brendan, like me, was a punk rock guy, and you know, so that kind of like very energetic, sort of like boogieing, almost kind of rhythm is something that's just baked into our music. You know,
I mean, that's Hot Snakes, man. That's like
exactly right. Like, I was going to say, like specifically, you know, through like we both, you know, grew up into like post-hardcore, you know, and like the good era of metalcore, frankly, you know, the late 90s and early aughts, like the kind of more
Botch.
Yeah, Botch, you know, Burnt by the Sun. And that stuff was all connected to bands like Hot Snakes and Drive Like Jehu. That's we actually there's a riff.
Drive Like Jehu.
Yeah, there's a riff on Scorched Vision that we call the Drive Like Jehu riff because it basically just is, you know.
Yeah.
And it's probably the one you're talking about. It's that kind of like the bouncy sort of riff. Yeah. It's
like
heavily influenced by just like that kind of like, you know, up tempo like post-hardcore groove that we both were listening to when we were like 14 to 15 years old.
Yeah. But yeah, the sort of
thanks for making me feel old again.
Hey, I mean, we're in our late 30s now. We're not exactly spring chickens over here. So.
Yeah, it's like, you know, there is still nearly 7 years between. And look at me, you know.
I know. It's coming for me too, man.
It's going to happen to me sooner or later, but, you know, I'm already going gray and everything. So, you know, mortality's bearing down on me.
But I know what you mean, Doug, when you say that. Yes, there is a lot of, I think that might be a better word. There is a lot of bounciness to it. to Scorched Visions, especially to the beginning.
Yeah.
That is definitely true. And I like that. That is like, I also went back a few days ago and listened to Avelut. And when I then listened to that one, I felt like, okay, that is a strong progression or development, or however you want to call that.
I think a lot of it is, we added a live rhythm section to the band. And, on Avelut, the rhythms are robotic, machine-like feeling because they are programmed. I mean, they're programmed to be realistic, but they still have that coldness and that like straightness. Whereas, with Lev and Tristan, I think especially brings a lot more swing and liveliness to the same backbeat played by those two guys versus the same backbeat played by the drum machine and me. And Brendan playing bass in his bedroom. It's not have that same sense of earthiness and life to it. It's going to feel cold and clinical by comparison. And I think like compositionally, like that is Tristan in particular was bringing out more of the swing and sort of like the bounce, to that music.
And a lot of the kind of like notes between notes stuff. He's doing all these like bends and glisses between notes and stuff, and it's just like the kind of like formula that I feel like we're finding our way to in some of these songs is one where like Dylan and I are just like we kind of define like a harmonic space and like a kind of texture, and then Tristan is almost more of like a melodic instrument than either one of us is. But yeah, I mean, I bristle a little bit at the jungle thing just because like to me it's like it's rock and roll, which is like, I mean, we're talking about like specifically it's kind of like big 3 against 2, which is just like clave, which is just like a straight up West African rhythm that is like filtered through like almost all like rock music that exists. And so there's just like, there's like funkiness and rock in it. That's like, it's part of that is rhythm. Part of that is just like my own understanding of like where all the music I play comes from. And I like having this kind of like the 3 against 2 thing is, I almost use it as a time signature, like having both layers present simultaneously at all time. Like that's how all of the Scorched Vision guitar parts are built basically. Where like I'm playing like phrases that are 3 beats long, Dylan's playing 4-beat phrases, and they line up every 12 beats. And
it's all over the record.
Yeah, it is.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Yep. And that just sort of like there's a kind of inherent like rhythmic tension in that, but there's a kind of like floating quality, or like I don't know. There's a lot of just like really. You can really play with the consonance and dissonance like in the rhythm and not just in the harmony when you have both those layers there. And it still reads as something you can really groove to also, which is like important to me.
Yeah, that groove aspect is definitely there on Scorched.
Yeah.
One question for Doug, also in order to take him out of his belittling habit that he's trying to show here.
I have only respect for Brendan's academic past.
No. I want to talk about you, my friend, because there is something that I think a lot of people should do when listening to Avelut and also to The Promise of Rain. They should be reading the lyrics. I did. And I mean, I'm an English teacher, so I fucking know that language quite a bit. But you had me look up every 10th word or so, and I was like, how have you developed into this walking thesaurus?
I mean, I'm trying to become less of I want my writing to be transparent so that anyone can read it. I don't want to be a walking thesaurus, but sometimes when you're
he simply is.
I'm basically a big nerd, and that kind of thing just happens to you against your will sometimes when you're a big nerd. I worked as a writer and editor for a long time until probably about it's like now 5 or 6 years ago. And I've just always been a person who is very interested in the language and who thinks that lyrics should be treated with more care than they are in the world of extreme metal. there is a I'm gonna not quite nail the quote, but there's this metal writer in the past. He's still around. He just doesn't write anymore. His name was Cosmo Lee. He's the guy who founded Invisible Oranges, and he's been out of the blogging game for almost 15 years now. But one of his last pieces that he wrote for Invisible Oranges was basically like this. I think it was called "Why Lyrics Matter," and the big takeaway punchline of the piece was if someone's screaming something at you, you should figure out what they're saying. It seems like that's important. And by the same token, if I'm going to, essentially plan my life around this act of writing words and then screaming them in a crazy voice over music, like I'm going to put my all into that. I'm going to take it as seriously as I can and try to write something that's meaningful, and that expresses something that I can't express in another way, and that feels emotionally resonant to me, and then by extension, hopefully to other people. Bottom line is I just worked on it a lot. I've been writing lyrics for various projects since I was in high school. It's always something where I try to make sure that the lyrics read well on the page. It doesn't need to be reliant on the sound of the song, which is not to say that it's necessary for all lyrics ever to read well on the page. It's just something that I strive for personally. And I just try to like invest myself emotionally in the lyrics and write something that I'm proud of. And it's pretty much that simple. There's not, to me, it's not mysterious any more than any other kind of writing is mysterious. You learn to listen to the sort of subconscious and precognitive parts of your brain and find things that part of your mind is trying to express that are not easily translated into something you can say to someone or something like that. In the same way that you do that for music composition,
Yeah.
like
that sounds a lot like my own process too.
Right. Yeah. Like you listen to your soul and you find out what your soul is trying to make known to the world, and then you use your medium to try and capture it. And that's pretty much it. And it just happens that I was trained as a writer, basically, and I have a lot of experience as a writer, and so that's my best means of capturing that stuff. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I know, and I understand how you try to rationalize it all, but don't belittle it too much, because it is a gift. You can one can read those lyrics, no matter if it's for Pyron or for Scarcity. One can read your lyrics, and they also would work as a poem. So, to be honest, while I was reading the lyrics for the first track, I felt like, okay, you could even use that stuff in your English class at one point or another, when you're talking about like environmental problems and stuff. At the same time, I also know that I cannot play the music because 80% of my students would be like,
well,
and I'd be like, yeah, that's the stuff I listen to at home.
I would be honored if you were to use it as a sample in your class. And I think that when you are an extreme metal vocalist, talking about your lyrics, it's natural to be self-effacing about it, because it just is not something that's taken very seriously for the most part. I mean, people just, as you said, you should read the lyrics. The fact that we're saying you should read the lyrics is in contrast to the default behavior, which is not looking at them or ever paying attention to them at all. So to some degree, I'm self-effacing about it because I'm aware of the station these things have in the world. But to me, it's life or death. I push myself very hard on them, and I take them very seriously. And to me, that's even more than the vocals is the biggest thing that I bring to my bands. I think that is the greatest skill that I have as an artist is lyrics. And so I do really put a lot of myself into them and work very hard to make them something that you can appreciate in isolation, and that work unto themselves, or hopefully with the music as well. And so I appreciate you saying that in that way, because again, most people are like, well, there's lyrics, I guess. Maybe I'll look, maybe not. So
yeah, but I mean, for me, lyrics have always been important because, growing up with Bad Religion at one point, which was a very influential band for me. And also even before that, listening to Rage Against the Machine. That's the way that I learned English.
Yeah.
I looked up words and, and then tried to memorize them in order to get them into my own mental lexicon, And therefore, I think like lyrics are very important on an academical and also on a like linguistical level. And at the same time, we all know that one friend of ours who never listens and never reads lyrics goes to a concert and all of a sudden sings the wrong stuff. And we're all embarrassed by him, right?
Pretends to sing the right lyrics.
Yes.
You see the guy mouthing. I've seen this many times as a vocalist. I see people mouthing along to the lyrics, and I'm like, wrong.
My God. Bro, you didn't even you didn't memorize these words that I wrote.
Well, I've never been like, stop it. But like, you see people doing it, and I'm like you're performing for the people who are next to you, but I can tell that you don't actually know the part.
You're fired, audience member.
It's very cute because they're very excited. They're really happy and they want to show how much energy the music is giving them. And I'm like, this is very sweet. However, you have no idea what the part is.
Yes.
However, that gives a very good opportunity to the three of us to talk quickly about something that is going to happen a few days after this interview will be released. For transparency's sake, for everybody, we're releasing this at the beginning of May. When you see this, it's June 30th. And guys, you're going on tour.
Going on tour.
When, where, when? Europe first, right?
New York, July 5th. Philly, July 6th. Providence, July 7th. And then we skip ahead to the following weekend, and we
Didn't learn it by heart.
Baltimore, July 12th, which is the day the record comes out. Raleigh on July 13th, and then Richmond, Virginia on the 14th.
Are you going to be headlining, or is there some other band who comes up later than you?
I guess we're headlining most of the. I think
we're headlining. Yeah. It's a short little. I would say this is like a extended series of record release shows. They're all relatively close by regionally. The hope is that, over the course of the next year or so after the release of the record, we'll be making it to Europe, playing some festivals maybe, playing out on the West Coast.
I have one where I would love to see you.
I've heard some festivals that might be interested, but I don't want to step on anything.
You can tell me later.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes.
But no, anyway, I think, and that for everybody here in Europe, when you ever get a chance to see this band live, well, first of all, when you ever get a chance to put your hand on a copy of records, buy it. Thank me later. And whenever you have a chance to see the guys live, I have seen Duck perform already, and I know it's a really, really intense way of performing. Let's put it like that. I always love to see you on stage. And I would love to see Mr. Randall Myers work his fingers over his guitar. So that would be cool to see. And for everybody, you've heard the dates in the States. So to make some space over that time, right? It's I'm very sure it will be a rewarding experience.
Brennan is a stage demon too, by the way. He's a real performer. Put him in the middle of the stage, honestly, because he's the most visually interesting person up there. So
I'm just having low-level seizures the whole time on stage, kind of.
Yeah, because cramps in your fingers.
Yes, it's I do for the whole first record. I was cueing big sections by basically just doing a big back bend and then doing just doing this with my whole body for the entire show. And I don't know. I do some that when we played the last show we did. I was almost getting into crabcore territory. Or I don't even know. My body just does stuff. I'm just here we are. I don't know.
I was sore after those last couple of shows because we're old now, and all my joints tell me that I've done something wrong after a couple days of that. So.
But then you also did something right.
Hell yeah. Had a great time. Yeah, it was totally worth it. Hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah, brother. Yep.
So, as I said, nobody leaves a Veil of Sound interview without having to go through our infamous quickfire round. And Brandon, you also still have to go through it because I looked up the ones that I gave you before, and I'm pretty
Great.
sure that I didn't get anything twice.
Great. All right.
Let's go chronologically from oldest to newest. Throbbing Gristle versus Neubauten. What would you rather listen to right now?
Throbbing Gristle.
I'm gonna say Neubauten.
Yes.
Controversial.
Ooh,
Mr. Moores, my man.
strife in the ranks.
Yeah, I'm very happy. This year I can. It's not my bucket list because I have already seen Neubauten twice, but I'm gonna see them again, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Really.
I'm very jealous. I've never seen them before, and if I ever get an
I
opportunity,
think they hardly come to the States ever, right?
They don't. No, not really. And I think last time they did, it was a long time ago. I don't even remember when it was. I've never had a good chance to see them, and if I do get one, I will run, not walk to the show. So.
I don't want to mention or like make anybody jealous, but the last time I've seen the Neubauten was when they opened or played one of the opening gigs at the new Philharmonic venue in Hamburg.
Germany.
Did they fire any guns in there or drive a bulldozer through any walls?
No, it was just funny.
Like
I mean, like the Elbphilharmonie, which is a huge thing in Hamburg. It's right at the sea. It's right at not at the sea at the river. It's a very old building, but they were like renovated all of that, and on top of that huge, not industrial, but like it was a huge building where they put in all the commercial stuff, and on top of that they built the Philharmonie, which has two halls, and it has a huge hotel. And I thought it was sarcastically cool that they had a band called Einstürzende Neubauten, collapsing new buildings. Play in that place, which cost the city of Hamburg, I think, 600 million euros to build.
Money well spent.
That was cool.
Yep,
that's awesome.
So we have that. Then let's go to a little bit of how should I say? For lack of a better word, post-punkish electronica or whatever. Fetus. I'll give you two records by Mr. Furwell, and you'll have to choose. Gash versus Soak.
I want to say Gash for this one.
I'm going to agree. I think Gash.
Yeah.
And then next step in the chronological order, Sonic Youth. I will not give you Daydream Nation because that's obviously their best record, at least for me. But I'll give you Dirty versus Goo.
I'll take Goo.
I'm going to say Dirty. I know it's the sellout record, but the songs are awesome. I'm sorry.
What's on Dirty? I'm like blanking on a lot. Like I don't have like good recall on a lot of this stuff.
100%.
Yeah, 100% is the opening track. That's the single.
That's good.
And isn't it
That's
Youth
good.
Against Fascism? Something like that?
Yep.
Is that also on Dirty?
I mean, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I love that record. Everyone
that's a good one.
got at it because it's their MTV record. But yeah, it's got Youth Against Fascism, Sugarcane.
Song for Karen, right?
Yeah, right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still, as a record, I still love Daydream Nation more. But yeah, Dirty.
Oh no! This is great. I'm blanking on like what Dirty had. I just like I have like pretty bad like name.
It's hit after hit. It's
that record's
just
awesome.
endless bangers.
It's really good.
I love that record. Yeah.
And there's also all the
Honestly,
weird shit. There's all the weird shit in the back half too, where it's like Nick Fit and like. Anyway, yes, that record's great.
Yeah.
I retract.
I love
my previous statement.
I love Goo too, but it's not that close to me.
Yeah.
Dirty wins. Yeah.
So would you say that Dirty to you is their best record?
I would say it's my favorite record from them in the 90s. There's a bunch of 80s era material that I would say that edges it out due to being very weird. But yeah, it's as far as their mainstream era, that's my favorite one.
Yeah.
And here everybody can see that I picked that up during our interview. Hot Snakes versus Rocket from the Crypt.
Hot Snakes.
Hot Snakes.
Not even close. I mean, Rocket from the Crypt.
Yeah, I didn't want to give you Drive Like Jehu, because that is, to me,
that would be a harder decision. I mean, Jehu is like
Drive Like Jehu versus Hot Snakes would actually be tough.
That would be hard.
I would probably say Drive Like Jehu.
Yeah,
but there's a lot more like good Hot Snakes music. You know, Drive Like Jehu only had the 2 records.
Yeah.
And those are both phenomenal albums, but
and Yank Crime is like one of the masterpieces that everybody should have.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yep. And like there's the riff at the end of Luau is just like half of like the many parts in Scorch Vision are just basically that weird tapping part. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's clear, the only thing that he can do, like, copy and paste.
That's what they teach in composition school.
That is what they teach you. Steal, baby, steal. Steal.
Yeah, better steal well than invent shittily, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Good artists borrow, great artists steal. That's party line.
Yep.
So let's move a little bit more into the present. I'll give you 3 couples that I think are very important to me, and I think you'll also like them. I hope that both of you have listened to Ken Mode's last 2 records.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Which one do you like more, Null or Void?
I'm going to say Null. Mm-hmm. It's close. I really like both of those records a lot.
Yeah.
Null has a little bit more of like the punishing, like rhythm heavy stuff, and I think they're really effective in that mode. Great band. I love that fucking band.
Yeah, they're awesome.
It's hard. You really can't miss, but that's
true. That's true.
Challenging question, because I'm like, I can't say. I mean, I don't know.
They're kind of just like different things. I mean, like Void is like more of like the mid tempo, kind of just like drawn out, like
the washy type shit. Yeah, the more textural. Like, I mean, they're meant to be, companion pieces. So it's almost like it's strange to think of them as being in opposition to each other in this way.
Yeah. If anybody wants to find out a little bit more about those 2 records, check out our archives, because we had interviews with Jesse on both records. So you might find out a lot more about Null and Void. And I would have to say that for me it would be Void. I don't know why, but the diversity of records on that record, on that one, is to me unbeatable. But yeah, you cannot miss with any Ken Mode album. You cannot miss.
Yeah, they're all good. Every single one.
Yeah. Let's go more into the tech death realms. Nightmare versus, and I know I'm gonna fuck that name up, but Nightmare versus Thanafaxeth.
Thanafaxeth. I mean, I actually don't know Nightmare, but Thanafaxeth are incredible. It's hard to imagine a band I would take, well, I don't know, in that same vein over them.
Brendan, I think you'd like Nightmare, but I think you would still go with Thanafaxeth. I'm also going to go with Thanafaxeth here. Both sick bands. Thanafaxeth is a band that Piron's played some shows with and stuff like that, so I know those guys. And awesome, amazing live band. Especially these days, they've gotten better and better live, and the current lineup is really fucking nasty live. So, sick band.
Yeah. And one more that I've learned the Chinese name, but I already forgot, being an old fucker, right? Sleepwalker versus Ulcerate.
Oh. Sleepwalker is the Chinese band, right? Like, I don't...
It's not... It's like 3 guys, 3 different continents. They agreed on that Chinese name.
Okay.
But everybody just Sleepwalker because nobody can pronounce.
Yeah. What the hell is the Chinese name for that band? I vaguely remember. I don't know this band. I'm familiar. I don't know this band super well.
I actually do know one of them very well, personally. One of the Sleepwalker guys. I do not know the Chinese name. I wouldn't even dare to try to pronounce that. But due to loyalty to my boy, I'm gonna have to go with Sleepwalker in this one. And actually, this is maybe top secret, but on the most recent Sleepwalker recording, I actually appear very briefly as a distant background vocal, way buried in the background.
That's cool.
You probably know. I think I know why you know. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I know why.
I know that you know that I know that you know. Like.
And now Brendan is like, what are the guys talking about?
But yeah,
Brendan will clue it up once we finish recording. We'll
beautiful.
Luke,
I'm now I'm trying to remember. Like, I'm now looking up the Chinese name for Sleepwalker.
You don't have to pronounce it. You just have to say which one you choose: Ulcerate or Sleepwalker.
I actually speak some Chinese.
Yeah,
so
Brendan
Cool.
speaks Chinese.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so-
wasn't that when you started writing Avilut?
I
When
was
you
in
were
Beijing.
in China?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sure was. But anyway, yeah, Sleepwalker. Yeah, 梦游病者.
Yeah.
That's it.
Does that mean
You could have said
sleepwalker?
anything, and we
It
both
means-
would have to agree.
Yes, 梦游 is like is sleepwalking, and then 病者 is a sick person or a patient.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's like a person afflicted with sleepwalking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what is your choice now?
Well, given that I don't like know this band, I will have to personally pick Ulcerate here.
Good.
Yeah.
I have to say, the new Ulcerate record is awesome. It's like
Sorry to your boy, Doug.
Yeah.
as soon as Doug listens to the new Ulcerate, he will also.
Yeah, I'll just throw throw a guy overboard.
So, guys, first of all, thanks.
Cut that.
No, we don't. But first of all, thanks for all the insight on the new record, for the fun conversation, and of course, thanks for giving food for thought. I think that's very important nowadays. So, now your chance for final last words. Oh yeah.
I don't know. Be good to each other out there. Shit's fucked up. I don't know. It's weird times.
Yeah. I would say everyone's going through it, and it's important to be patient with people who are going through it. And so try to do that, and don't try to carry all of your burdens by yourself. It's important to lean on people as well when you can. And also buy our new album. It's coming out on July 12th via
In
the
12
Flenser.
days from now.
Yes, 12 days from now via the Flenser. I believe it's being distributed in Europe by Deathwish. Yeah, they do the European distribution for us. And we'll hopefully come to a town near you soon. Album's called The Promise of Rain, and you should listen to it.
Definitely should. So first of all, thanks for all the intel, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Likewise, man. Thank you for having us.
Dude. Yeah, thank you, Thorsten.